For centuries, legends have told of an enormous ape-like creature who lurks in the world's most remote forests. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the abominable snowman. In Asia, it's known as the Yeti, or abominable snowman. Some Native Americans call it Sasquatch, which means hairy giant. But for most people, this elusive beast is simply known as Bigfoot, for the giant footprints it leaves all around the globe.
Bigfoot-type creatures have been seen all around the world. There were reports from South America, Amazon, the Himalayas, different parts of China, Russia, even in Europe.
Tales of a towering, hairy creature have been recorded for centuries. Medieval knights wrote of terrifying encounters with monstrous giants in Germany's Black Forest. And European folktales spoke of ape-like creatures attacking animals and even humans. In North America, Sasquatch sightings have been reported in every province in Canada and every state in the US except Hawaii. Based on these eyewitness accounts, experts have tried to determine just how many of these creatures could be roaming our most inaccessible forests.
It has been estimated by various people to be of the order of between 6,000 and 10,000 in North America.
Here you have this large creature supposedly living right on the outskirts of where humans live without us having any scientific knowledge of them.
But as more and more people join the search, conclusive proof that Bigfoot creatures exist could be discovered at any moment.
If you have a more open mind and are willing to look for things, you might actually find them.
In the United States, the best place to start looking is in the Pacific Northwest, where the largest number of Sasquatch have been sighted. And though rumors of Bigfoot have been floating around California since the early 1900s, it wasn't until 1958 that a construction crew here came across a startling discovery.
It's off these trails that we see many footprints.
Ed Schillinger was a civil engineer who worked with 3 others during a road building stint near Willow Creek.
It was almost on a daily basis. When we found these prints, we attribute them to this creature.
After a newspaper published the crewmen's story, the nickname they had given the creature, Bigfoot, became ingrained in people's minds.
The whole American phenomena of Bigfoot really starts in October of 1958, when the world really began to know this word through the media. Since 1958, people have used the word Bigfoot to describe any large, hairy, bipedal, human-like creature.
A national obsession was born. It was easy to see why. The size of the footprints was staggering. Henner Fehrenbach is a retired zoologist who's worked extensively with Portland, Oregon's Primate Research Center. But outside his day job, he closely examines and extensively studies any scientific evidence related to Bigfoot-like footprints.
At the top end, you have footprints that go well over 2 feet, and these are enormous.
A large foot translates into an imposing and terrifying animal.
A 16-inch footprint corresponds to 7 foot 9 inches. An 18-inch footprint would be probably 8.5 feet tall.
Experts jumped at the chance to examine these large and mysterious footprints.
Once you become accustomed to forests of United States, almost anywhere, it's really amazing that you ever find footprints, because the ground isn't laid out for catching good footprints like the beach is. So when you do find them, they not only have an inhuman size, they are much wider. I have found footprints in several locations on my own. They were haphazard locations where I found it.
And there's more. Henner even has hair samples of what he thinks is a Sasquatch.
I have gotten 2 samples that I deemed legitimate. One sample consisted of 2 different hair batches from freshly twisted off trees.
But the enormous strides of these hairy giants may reveal more about their true nature.
This is one of the items that is least possible to be hoaxed. Their step length is enormous because they walk differently than we do. The average step length is 5 feet. You'd have to get a running start to go from footprint to footprint. And on some occasions, continuous tracks have been followed for miles with that footstep length.
Thousands of eyewitness accounts tell me there's something pretty credible going on with Bigfoot in North America.
By now, I have probably read 12,000 eyewitness reports.
I'd always heard of Bigfoot, and so when I actually saw one, I knew that it was a Bigfoot.
Ricky Masters Best is convinced a Bigfoot crossed her path in the Trinity Mountains near Redding, California, when she was 10 years old.
Something caught the corner of my eye, and I looked up to the right, and I saw a Bigfoot up there running very fast. He was very large, I'd say 7, 8 feet tall. That memory has always been burned into my brain.
But in 1967, Ricky's story would gain credibility when new evidence of Bigfoot's existence came to light. 2 relentless Bigfoot hunters scoured the woods near Willow Creek until they made the discovery of a lifetime. Evidence of the creature's existence that to this day still has not been disproved.
There was an expedition in search of Bigfoot that came into this area led by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, and they shot 15 seconds of 8mm film that's become quite famous of a supposed Bigfoot walking up the river bar where we're standing.
Experts worldwide jumped at the chance to scrutinize the film. What they discovered brought Bigfoot into focus.
But with the Patterson film, we know exactly how tall it was, about 6.5 feet tall. We know what it looked like in terms of bulk.
Close observation of the film shows muscle contraction, torn hair, wounds, and even female breasts. The creature's presence was shockingly human-like.
To see this thing that appears to be a female, appears to be very calmly walking away and turning around, just really shocked the scientific community.
It just seems unusual that a costume would be designed that would be of a female rather than of a male.
The general scientific community is going to remain skeptical of the results until their nose gets rubbed in a corpse.
Or a real live Sasquatch is captured. But since the creatures are thought to be nocturnal and extremely elusive, it's a huge challenge.
People that have observed them with night vision equipment found that they hide behind bushes even in the dark. They do not like to expose themselves. And when they do get seen, once in a long while where they're plainly exposed, that is simply pure chance.
But the Pacific Northwest is not the only place in America to look for the mysterious Sasquatch. In the 1960s, Bigfoot was sighted thousands of miles away in the small hamlet of Fouke, Arkansas. And for some, it came a little too close for comfort.
It was a tall, hairy, bipedal animal that was seen around people's houses in very rural Arkansas, very near the Texas border. Up there, they were reporting 3-toed tracks that the Fouke monster supposedly left.
The Fouke monster, as locals called their Bigfoot, was different from the others. It showed violent tendencies.
It's like killing their dogs and their cows, and it picked one like big pig up over a fence and just freaked everybody out. Everybody got scared.
Things died down in the 70s, but people in Fouke remained jittery.
I just watch him and observe him and just leave him alone. There's no telling what he could do.
But most Bigfoot are considered harmless to humans.
I've never investigated a credible first-hand story of anybody being harmed, injured, killed, attacked by one of these things.
The steamy swamps of the Florida Everglades are home to loads of creepy creatures, like slithering reptiles and, of course, alligators. One Floridian in the small town of Achapi has spent the better part of his lifetime focused on another indigenous creature. A smellier version of Bigfoot called skunk ape.
I heard about the skunk ape since as far back as I can remember, but when I was 10 years old, I was out here hunting with my brother, and we both saw something very unusual. It was about 100 yards away, moving through the grass, 7, 8 feet tall. And well, we knew what it was right away because we'd heard about the skunk ape.
The reason they call it a skunk ape is because it smells somewhat like a skunk.
The creature's pungent odor is a common element of many Bigfoot sightings. All Bigfoot smell because they live in the wild. But the damp, hot, and musty environment of the Everglades makes skunk ape especially stinky.
The skunk ape seems to have frequent bouts with mange and other things that give us this incredibly deep, harsh, awful smell like a skunk.
Legends of a long-haired, ape-like creature have been a part of local Native American lore for hundreds of years. And Achapi resident David Sheely is determined to turn these legendary tales into reality. David is a hardcore skunk ape enthusiast and expert and claims to have had 3 close encounters with the skunk ape. His closest one came after tracking it every day for 6 months.
It was getting dark one evening, and I heard something splashing in the water. And when I looked up about 100 yards in front of me, it's a skunk ape just coming right at me. I took photographs over approximately 7 or 8 minutes. What the photographs show is a skunk ape traversing a freshwater prairie and headed into a cypress swamp. It was approximately 6.5 feet tall, covered with reddish brown hair, moving just normal walking speed, walking on 2 legs. One point it crouched down, and then it stood back up again. I think maybe it'd been feeding.
We're gonna go to that little hammock right over there. And a hammock is a high piece of ground that forms here in the Everglades. I've seen skunk apes within a mile of here. It's a good place to set up a stand and take a look around.
So I'm gonna start with my binoculars, working this area over and seeing what's out there.
In the wide and open expanses of the Everglades, it would seem like an easy thing to spot a skunk ape. But in these parts, things are not always what they seem.
The Everglades itself is elusive. It's a big area, and it's just so easy to disappear into it. Talk about standing in a field, blink my eyes and it's gone.
Years of experience have taught David what and what not to look for.
Well, here in the Everglades, you're not gonna find a whole lot of tracks, especially this time of year. So what I look for is where the grass is parted and something has moved through the grass.
But as you can see, it's a large area, a lot of vegetation, just a great environment for a skunk ape out here. It's one of my favorite places. If you want to see a skunk ape, then right here, this is ground zero. This is where you're going to find them. This is a hot spot.
Luckily for David, tracks aren't the only way to find the skunk ape.
You know, I do smell something here. I smell a skunk. It does, don't it? That's the smell that you smell right there. We don't have skunks down here in the Everglades, in this part of the Everglades.
It smells like a skunk, which, as David mentioned, there's not skunks in this part of the Everglades. It's just too wet.
So the smell can only mean one thing. Skunk ape is somewhere nearby.
Can you smell it around there, Jason?
Yeah.
David and his team scour the area, but it's clear the only thing that's stuck around is the smell.
It stinks in here.
Probably got up earlier this morning, it's a little cooler, and moved out.
As the creature's pungent stench lingers in the swampy air, David knows he's missed him again.
We came down to Ochapee to visit Dave in the skunk ape research headquarters office, and that's when we ended up seeing it on the way here. I saw the skunk ape about 50 yards off the road. I was pretty excited. I wasn't scared.
When it happened, it was just like awesome. Can't believe it.
I was coming from my home on my way to work in Everglades City, and coming halfway down my road, Burns Road, something crossed in front of my car. I saw something that kind of looked like a bear. It looked like it was taller, like longer legs, and was kind of, can't explain, just like slinking or, you know, not like running fast, but it was standing in an upright position. And it took off. It was just a brief moment that I saw it and went off into the woods. And then I was like, oh my God.
I've got tracks and I've got photographs, hair samples, but the most credible evidence that I have that is undisputed and factual is the fact that hundreds of people are willing to swear that what they saw was real and that what they saw was a skunk ape.
Whether he's wading in the swamps or collecting samples for his research, David says he is preserving the legend of skunk ape for generations to come.
That's my goal, just make sure these things are protected the way they should be. I would like to be able to ensure the future of skunk apes here in the Everglades for many, many years to come.
Outside of the Pacific Northwest and Florida, Texas boasts its own fanatics intent on proving that the Bigfoot legend is more than just a tall tale. From the deep green forests of the Pacific Northwest to the mucky swamplands of the Everglades, rumors of Bigfoot-type creatures abound. But there's a region where sightings go back nearly 200 years. Despite its history, some are calling this unfamiliar land the new frontier. Texas might bring to mind visions of cowboys and the Alamo, But few people outside of the Bigfoot community know that it's also a hotspot for Sasquatch activity and research. It is estimated that more than 1,000 sightings have taken place throughout Texas in the last decade. And there's a new group of people who are putting everything they've got into proving the creatures as real as they come. Just 30 miles from the home of the Fouke monster in Arkansas, the small city of Jefferson in northeast Texas has everything a typical town would have. An old-time barber shop, a traditional general store, and an occasional freight train roaring through. But when night falls, it's obvious this area is cloaked in mystery. Locals say that night times when the Bigfoot roams the deep wetlands and bayou near Caddo Lake.
The lake is extremely wild and fully wilderness. A lot of the people there will tell tales of seeing the creature actually in the shallows of Caddo Lake, around the edges of the lake.
In the 1990s, sightings in the area soared and terrified some of the townsfolk.
What are these animals? What do they do? What do they eat? How do they live? So far, there's a lot more questions than there are answers.
Bigfoot's secret remains hidden in the Texas forests. And a state this big boasts more forests than most realize, which means even more spots for Bigfoot to hide.
People don't think of Texas as heavily forested, but there's, in the state of Texas, I believe 22 million acres of forest land. That's more forest land than the state of Oregon.
Reports of an ape-like man or wild man in the area date back to 1837. But the Texas Bigfoot craze started in 1965 when a newspaper story broke about a boy who said he'd come face to face with a frightening creature on a country road.
He heard a noise. He turned around and looked, and he said there was a huge man. He had hair all over him, and he was very tall and big, and he started running.
While doing his journalistic legwork, Dwayne Dennis happened upon a rather surprising footprint.
It would have taken an artist to make that footprint. It was yay long, 5 toes.
Since the report in 1965, thousands of sightings of a hairy bipedal monster have been reported, and the momentum is growing. According to the Texas Bigfoot Research Center, or TBRC, in the last decade, an average of 150 sightings are reported each year in the sleepy northeastern part of the Lone Star State. But why here?
In Texas, I would say 80% of the sightings are predominantly in the eastern third of the state, where the rainfall totals are more than 35 inches of rain a year. It leads us to believe that these animals want to be in areas where there's abundant rainfall.
And that also means there's more wildlife for Bigfoot to feed on. Unsuspecting hunters are usually the first ones to encounter this frightening creature.
Of the hundreds of sighting reports, one of the most compelling was a guy that was out hog hunting, and he caught movement, something coming up. There was one of these creatures, and this creature crouched down behind a tree checking things out and actually pounced out and grabbed one of these hogs. It pretty much took the hog, slammed it up against the tree, and started pummeling it. Killed the hog, picked up the hog, threw the hog over its shoulder as it's taking off. It turns around, looks back at him, looks directly at him, and throws its head back and just makes this god-awful vocalization.
Mike Hall was accompanied by a newspaper reporter who had been covering a story about their expedition.
We topped a hill about 3/4 of a mile from where we had left the other guys, and I heard her say, "What's that?" My heart's just like coming out of my chest going, oh my God, I can't believe this. Of course, the reporter, who's been a skeptic this entire weekend, her eyes are just the size of saucers.
The incident convinced Mike more than ever that something had to be hiding in the Texas woods.
The woods here have been referred to as Texas jungle. It will be so dark that you literally will not be able to see your hand in front of your face. We're in southeast Texas. This area is known as the Big Thicket, and it has a long history of sightings.
It sounded like it was a lot closer. It seems like he's heading this way, over.
Roger that, Red River. Was it loud enough for your team to record?
It's a sound unlike any they've heard before.